Good morning. Yes, it is 6:30 in the morning, or a little bit past, but I've been up for hours. The story is about Mrs. White. And I don't even know if that was her real name. She just had white hair, and this is a 7-year-old's memory of that time. So I could have given her that name, or could have been her name. In any case, I don't think there was a Mr. White or Mr. whatever her last name was. I think she just lived in that house by herself, and it happened to be the largest house on the neighborhood, or on our block in our neighborhood. And it was next to our house, which was the smallest house, probably, maybe close to another one. It was close to the smallest house in the neighborhood. She lived alone. We had 4 kids in our 2-bedroom house. This memory is very sketchy. It just has a few highlights, and I think I might have filled in some of the blanks with my story, my brain. So I'll try to stick to the things that I truly remember. I would go there after school. It was during a year that I spoke very little, and I think it was some sort of agreement with my grandmother, who I stayed with a lot during that time. And her, Mrs. White, that I would go there after school. I'm not sure of that connection, but looking back on it, it makes sense to me. I don't know how I would have discovered her, or her discovered me, or how I would have got an invitation into her house had it not been for my grandmother. So I just put that together in there. May or may not have been true. In any case, after school, I would go to her house, partly to watch TV, because we did not have a TV in our house. But there were rules that I had never, ever encountered before. Nobody in my world took their shoes off, except in Mrs. White's house, and our shoes came off right away. And I do remember very vividly that they were the black and white Oxford heavy-duty shoes, and we got a pair at the beginning of the school year, and we always bought them a little too large because they had to last the whole school year. So as a consequence, we got blisters the first part of the year. Then your feet toughened up and you were fine. And then towards the end of the year, they were too small and they hurt your feet again. But by May, or whenever we got out of school, we just took them off and went barefoot for the summer. Anyway, back to Mrs. White. So her house was a lot different than ours, besides the shoe removal at the beginning. I think she made me take my socks off or shook them out. I just remember this real ritual about getting ready to enter her house. She wasn't mean about it. It was just her thing. And I didn't mind because I knew what was coming and what we were going to get to do. Now, the second thing I remember that was extremely different in her house than in our house was that she had paintings everywhere. Everywhere. Large paintings, small paintings. Some of them might have been her paintings. I don't have a clear memory of that. I know that she painted because I could see back on the porch area that she had like an easel and stuff. So I have a memory of that. She never showed me how or talked about her painting, or maybe she did and I just don't remember because I was 7 years old. But in any case, it wasn't the paintings themselves. I do kind of remember that some were landscapes and some might have been like still lifes, but it wasn't the paintings that intrigued me. It was the fact that she had paintings. In our house, we had a rule that no one was to put a nail in the wall and threaten to damage the wall. Now, there were a lot of things in our house that were a lot more ready to be or were already a lot more damaged than those walls were going to be if we put a nail in them. But there was nothing hung on our walls. Not a calendar, not a family photo, nothing. And that was just the rule, even in our bedrooms. And so, and even in the houses around us, like at my grandmother's, the photos, the family photos were on top of the piano, and there might have been a calendar, but that was it. And then my great-grandmother, yes, I still had a living great-grandmother. The only thing on her wall that I remember was the little hole where you used to have a a pipe that went from the wood stove into the wall had been removed. The pipe had been removed, and there was a cap that went over the hole, and it had a little silhouette of a woman. And I love that. That was the only thing on her wall. So walking into, maybe it was Mrs. White, maybe it was Mrs. Jones, I don't know. Let's just call her Mrs. White. Walking into her home and seeing all that art was a really life-changing moment for me, even though I might not have recognized it at the moment. Now, there were other things. She had a piano, just like my grandmother, might have even been the same kind of piano. And it was different at her house around the piano than it was at my grandmother. My grandmother showed me a few songs. One of them was, what was it called? But anyway, my grandmother showed me how to play some songs. Mrs. White did not, but she allowed or encouraged me to sit at the piano for, 10, 15 minutes while she made our refreshments for TV watching. So I don't remember ever going further into the house besides the living room where the art was, the bathroom, and the bedroom that was set up like a little seat lounge area or something. It had a twin-size bed in it that had pillows on it that was more like a couch, and the TV was in there, not in the living room. So she would disappear into the kitchen and make our refreshments, and then when she came out, we would go into the bedroom and set up, and we would watch, are you ready? The Lone Ranger. I would have watched anything to be in that home and to be with Mrs. White and to be able to watch TV and have a refreshments. Now, the refreshments were not just any kind of refreshments. She made cookies and she put them on paper doilies. And I remember very clearly recognizing that she would reuse the paper doilies after we removed our cookie, and it was usually just one cookie, maybe two if we were really lucky. And she would shake off the crumbs and she would take it and put it aside, and I knew that she reused it again, so I took note of that, and I was very careful not to get any messes on the doilies so that she could reuse them. And we watched The Lone Ranger. Now, I don't have any memory of how much in that year I went to her house. I don't have any memory of why I stopped going or how long I went for. And I've tried to remember. I just know maybe we got a TV later that year. Maybe, I hope that wasn't the reason. I hope we didn't get a TV and I just stayed home to watch TV and never saw Mrs. White again. But I don't have any memory of seeing her again. I know she moved or went away, but I don't know why. And there's nobody left to ask. I've asked a few people early on in my adulthood about her, and nobody seemed to remember much, and now they're all gone, so I don't know. She moved. The Lowe's moved in. I started talking again. We had our own TV. The Lowe's had a teenage daughter, and I did go visit her. And we watched, what was the Saturday morning dance music thing with Dick Clark? What was that called? I'll find out, and I'll put it up here. Anyway, and we did she gave us manicures and pedicures, and this was the teenage daughter. And they are not around anymore either. So I wonder sometimes how little it takes to inspire somebody toward seeing the world a little differently than they were able to see it before. I have a really great memory of my friend Brooks Hickerson, who is a plein air painter in Portland, and I met him in Eugene and we painted together, and then he moved to Portland and I moved later, and he and his wife live here, and he paints almost every week, almost year round. And one time we were painting, and he was quite far along in his painting when a group of a family with some small children came by, and the children were very fascinated by what he was doing. And he just handed the brush to the little boy and let him make some marks on the painting. And then he remarked, "I think it made my painting better." And the little boy went away thrilled with that experience. And I've often thought about him. Well, not often. I guess I'm thinking about him now, maybe for the first time. I think about like how much that could have influenced him in his course of life. We never know. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It could be a Mrs. White deal where you just sit with somebody for a moment and you show them something different on their walls and in their life than in your life up to that moment.